Hey there, guys. Creeveless here with the Quintessential Rhythm Podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today. In this latest episode, I have a very, very special guest joining us. You guys have known him from his previous line of work, including but not limited to In the Groove, Pump It Up Pro, Re-Rave, and his latest venture into the rhythm and dance game world, StepManiaX. So please welcome the one and only, the Kyle Ward. Welcome, Kyle. Thank you so
Woo!
much for being here.
Hands up in the air, cheering sounds, all
Woo!
that stuff. Yeah, no,
So
yeah,
we're
no.
we're
How's it
doing
going?
yeah, it's going great, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's an honor to speak with you. And I've
Same.
always wanted
Thank
to
you.
have you on. Yeah, I just always wanted to have you on. And then talk to you and kind of pick your brain about, and just go over your story. So, um, yeah, so how have things been going this last year or so?
Man, it's been kind of a wild ride for us, just because there's so much that we do with this project. It's I like to explain it to people as it's sort of like when you think about everything we've done in the past, it's like if you took all of that and mashed it together into one megazord of a project. And all we had all of the experience from In the Groove back in the day, and we also had school experience from iDance, and then of course the stuff with Re-Rave, so it's like a mesh of all of those things that worked well together, and now we're sort of just approaching it from all different areas, including like the home market too at the same time, which is always sort of a crazy venture in itself. But it's been a wild ride. Honestly, there's always something to do every single day, and there's never a dull moment. That's the best way I can describe it, really.
Yeah, and so I've had a lot of personal experience playing StepManiaX, and I'm really happy to see it grow for you and your team because it's such a beautiful
Thank you.
project and product, and and you're welcome because it absolutely is like the perfect amalgamation of all your past projects and goes off into a different direction to kind of be its own thing too, which is absolutely beautiful. So
Yeah.
getting that chance to play it because in the past it's like, oh, I was lucky if I got to play something, like Pump It Up Pro. Going back to that, like, I never thought I would actually get to play that. And I remember having this conversation with my friend, because we were avid In the Groove players. We started with Dance Dance Revolution like many people do in the community.
Yep.
And then I'm like, what is this In the Groove game? Like, I don't know what this is. Like, so we tried it, and I remember playing In the Groove 2, Queen of Light, Expert, and seeing a set of hands, and I'm like, what is this?
Oh
And I
yeah.
just kind of threw my hands up in the air, no pun intended, and I looked at my friend and I'm like,
Not on the
what
stage, but in
was
the
that?
air.
Yeah, I was just in the air like, ah.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, um, so to have, and I remember, but the story was that I remember saying, wouldn't it be crazy if they took these songs and they put them on Pump It Up? Because we were kind of back and forth between Pump It Up and then the Groove and DDR. And then lo and behold, like, a year or so later, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's playing, bang on Pump It Up. Like, that's insane. That's like the hardest thing ever. So, it's great to have one
Pump It
here.
Up Pro is yeah. Pump It Up Pro is actually a really successful project too. And what's funny is a lot of people, even if In the Groove 3 would have kept going or things would have kept going, Pump It Up Pro actually would have still come out anyway,
Really?
because all
Okay.
of those arrangements. Oh yeah, all of those arrangements happened at ASI. I believe it was. I think it was 2004, ASI 2004. And Andamiro, there was a point where In the Groove was selling so fast and so much that like we had our own booth there, obviously as Roxor, and Andamiro also had their booth, and they were pushing Pump It Up Zero, and
Hmm.
I think it was Exceeding Zero at the time. But they had specifically talked to us about, we love what you're doing within the Groove, and we would love for you to give this kind of treatment to the Pump It Up franchise because we think it would really benefit the players, or especially people in North America and the European audience. And so that's exactly what we did. And we're lucky that with the results of what happened with In the Groove project, that we ended up just transferring a lot of stuff over. But it would have been interesting to sort of split the difference at the time, because we would have had to have done both, and it might have been more difficult to pull off. But there's nothing we can't do, the way we like to look at it, at least. But um, that I actually for me, I love Pro because I spent a lot of time also testing it, and we built a really good community here in Vancouver based on it. And I've always looked at, classic Dance Dance Revolution and Pump It Up as inspiration for things. And I was just honored to be able to have a chance to leave an impact with the Pump It Up franchise. And I think we did a lot of really good things at the time. And there was a lot of inspirations from that project that you actually still can see in the Pump It Up franchise today, like the sound on the FX cabinets. I remember there was a manufacturing defect early in the stage of the cabinet, and they had reversed all the phase on the bass, which I identified and helped them with. The other big advancement was the buttons. That was the very first time that Pump It Up ever would have buttons, which at the time there were a lot of people that were really defensive about adding buttons to Pump It Up, but we were adamant about people need to be able to use this game and have the ability to navigate and mainly just be able to use it, because it's been a problem, for Pump It Up for years. And so we fixed that. The other thing that is a pretty major advancement at the time was the welded back bars. Before that point, the back bars were always detachable with screws in the back, which you being a player for a while, you might remember that. But the Pro project was basically the first one to introduce all of those advancements. And actually, they're you'll still see them on the cabinets today. The buttons are a little bit different, obviously, and they've been changed. But before I think it was Prime. No, I guess it was the 20th anniversary. The buttons were always the same ever since Pro. They had remained on the cabinet, and they started being utilized in the Korean pumps too. So kind of cool. Anyway, sorry, tangent.
Oh no, that's fine. We can go, like you said, we can go along as long as you need to or want to, but just it is really difficult because I've seen people go up and they play Pump It Up, and it's a hard game for people to understand because it's, they say, oh, this is Dance Dance Revolution. It's like, yeah, same kind of idea, but you have a different interface, you have different music to a degree, and that can be very, different. Yeah. Oh, why is this song here? But what my point was, like, yeah, those buttons really did help, and they were controversial at the time because I do remember that on message boards and whatnot.
They were abomination. I remember. Yeah. In fact, we made a course just joking about it in the development, but yeah, they received a lot of backlash. It was really interesting.
But it's good now because so many people, and that's a thing that StepManiaX takes further, because you use the touch screen now. Oh, yeah. So because people are used to having a touch screen devices all over in every aspect of their life. So, exactly. Oh, this is my phone, this is my tablet, this is in my car, this is in my kitchen.
Almost everything is touch operable today. And it's funny because you still see some people walk up to some of the dance machines and Pump It Up is a good example. I've seen people try to touch the screen actually, and it doesn't do anything. So they're pretty clueless about it, unfortunately. And yeah, that unfortunately that is a problem that plagues Pump It Up still to this day, is just the UI experience is, it's just not ideal with it. But the players that follow it, they're used to it working that way. So it usually works for them, but it's not as user friendly, unfortunately, to new people.
Oh yeah, and I totally agree with that. And when I saw that StepManiaX was touchscreen, I was like, what? It was like, it was not something that I expected. I mean, of course you and your team did re-rave and all that. So I don't know why I didn't expect it, but it still surprised me, I guess, because I'm thinking this is a dance game. There's always been a button. There probably always will be a button. So it's just, and StepManiaX is so easy to use, and you can get in there, you can select your song. The only part of StepManiaX I ever had trouble with was just adjusting to that center button being in a in a DDR-esque type environment. But after one or two rounds, you're completely fine, and it's almost natural.
And it's funny because when a lot of people try the game at first, they're really, they're concerned about the use of the center button, and they're not sure what to think about it yet. And probably one of the biggest questions we get when someone first tries the game is there a way to disable the center button? And I can totally understand that mentality because back when I was solo is a good example that I can think of. When you introduce a new arrow column position to the gameplay, a lot of times it can mess with people's mind a little bit. And the main thing is it's just not familiar to somebody. So it's very hard for them to take a step back and sort of retrain their brain about how to actually work or be the type of caliber of skill set that that they're used to, because
Mm-hmm.
no one wants to go from playing the hardest levels to having to go back to not necessarily easy, but having to go back and sort of relearn that just a little bit. And I would say that I'm really proud of the way that we introduced the center button, because it does offer some unique moves to the 4-panel
Mm-hmm.
format that you don't get with Dance Dance Revolution or in the Groove. And it also solves a fundamental problem that I think is sort of an issue today with the 4-panel format, is people don't move as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily the Pump It Up X format sort of solves that as well, because you're sort of in a position where you need to move more and twist. And it's really the twisting that and all about that. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the 4-panel format doesn't really have any twisting. It really has the crossovers, and that's about the extent of the twisting that it gets. But that center position really adds that twist element, but also the need to move and pick up your feet again, which again, I think it's something that the 4-panel format has needed for a while. So I'm happy that we're able to offer that. And it also makes some interesting jump patterns and other things that we like as well.
Oh yeah, so. and it's like every time you guys put out a video for the update, I'm always like, oh, I want to look at that wild chart. I want to see what they're doing here. And it's great because I love a lot of the callbacks and those types of charts, especially for In the Groove songs. So when I looked at Charlene, and first of all, let me say I was shocked, because I was like, oh, I don't think we're ever going to get Missing Heart. I thought maybe Missing Heart, but Erotic, it was like, yeah, this is more of a kid, like a family friendly game. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, like this is great,
We do have the ability. The only reason we're able to really do that, I guess, diligently, is we do have family filter options in the game. So there are a lot of places that are very sensitive to family friendly environment, which I completely understand.
Oh yeah,
But we do offer, we have a way of making it possible so that people can hide specific songs or activate the family filter if they need to do that, which I do believe that Pump It Up has a way of hiding the songs as well. But it's a feature that's surprisingly missing from a lot of music games that as an operator, it's really important sometimes for your environment to be able to, base it on what your clientele expects, or, if it's a kid environment, you probably don't want that music.
Yeah, and that. Which, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, not at all. I'm just saying it depends on the environment, and luckily we approach it in a way that if people want it, it's available, and it is definitely a throwback to the past, and people like the music. So we like to try to figure out solutions that work in both cases, and I think it's a good balance, because people have the ability to completely remove it if they need to. So.
Oh no, that's great, because I remember we had Re-Rave and Re-Rave Plus at Disney Quest, which was a 5-story arcade at downtown Disney, or Disney Springs now, and it's been gone for a few years now. They bulldozed the building and made something else, but I remember them having the StepManiaX, and we couldn't play. I think it was like Romeo and Juliet. Juliet.
Oh.
It's because they had turned that off, and there was, I think there was one other song. It might have been Pretty Ugly or something, and it was kind of sad. But in those environments, and so like I remember seeing, I think Pretty Ugly is like the cut in StepManiaX different, because I think it might be
a little bit. Yes.
A little bit. Okay.
Yes. It masks a particular part of the song.
Okay. Because when I saw that song, like, this would be a great song to have in StepManiaX.
Disney Quest was a huge Re-Rave supporter back in the day. They actually had, I think they purchased, I think it was either 3 or 4 machines, and it was in their top 10, along with Speed of Light, which they loved the game. But the Disney infrastructure was very, very adamant about not having any games communicate with the outside world or putting content into the game that wasn't approved for kid environments. And it actually took us almost a year to get them to even link it online to be able to receive updates, because they were very much against that, which if you know anything about the Disney infrastructure, they're very controlling, and sometimes that works really well. It's like they want a certain experience for their customer base, and they do a good job maintaining that. I mean, it's Disney. So
and it
anyway,
it was great to play it there, because they sold annual passes. So for $100 a year, you could go, if you went 3 times, you paid for the pass, it paid for itself, because otherwise it was about, $50 or so to get in each time. So, but it was great because they had the StepManiaX, and they called it, Pump It Up Heaven there, because, we had an Exceed machine, or Exceed 2 machine. We had a Zero. we had all these things. So, and then we had a DDR X2 at one point, and they ended with Fiesta 2013. So that was great to get that experience playing re-rave, on a full-sized, cab.
Oh
And those
yeah,
screens were huge. I remember like, wow, this is great. And I
46
was,
inch.
yeah, and I was never that great at it, but I had friends that were, and they would play Black Magic and, Gargoyle, and just
Yeah.
just really, stomp out those charts and on those harder difficulties. So it was a great product. But Kyle, I wanted to ask you, how did you get your start doing all this? What got you into, doing music and into the
Yeah.
rhythm and gaming, dance game communities to be such a positive and productive member like you are?
Well, I was actually really fortunate. So the way I got into it was I went to school in Seattle for video production actually and communications, which is really my background. And I happen to, which is really funny. I have a interesting past with Dance Dance Revolution actually. When back in the day when we did a lot of LAN parties and things, it was a little bit ago, obviously, but um, it's funny. I had always seen the home setups or like things that people would do at LAN events with DDR, and I didn't really
Hmm.
know what it was at the time, and I never had tried it, but I was intrigued by it. But what really happened is in Seattle when I was going to school, they of course have one of the famous GameWorks locations there, and I got in the mentality of going to GameWorks almost at least 3 or 4 times a week with the time card,
Hmm.
not with I wasn't really into paying per credit. I wanted the
Hmm.
time card because I wanted the full hour or 2 hour experience with the game. So I remember seeing people play Dance Dance Revolution, and I fell in love with the idea of, first of all, the music at the time. I love that type of music, and music production was always a hobby on the side of doing video production. So, it's all multimedia anyway when you think about it. But
Hmm.
I just always loved to make music on the side outside of media stuff for school. So I sort of fell in love with the concept of moving to the music because I've always loved products that sort of immerse you or involve you in a way where and music games are a perfect example of that. You sort of become one with the music,
Hmm.
and it benefits you in a positive way because you're obviously doing things with your mind and you're getting exercise at the same time. And I never really considered myself a music gamer. I just really love the concept of moving with the music and sort of interpreting it. And so that's what really drew me into the concept of dance games. But the way that In the Groove started was at the time, I connected with Chris Stanford, and if anyone knows who he is, he was sort of the original creator of the StepMania series completely, which a lot of the naming with why we picked StepManiaX was sort of a throwback to the
Hmm.
original StepMania project, but also sort of like a branding image because now in today's world, there's so many dance game type of products that,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of debate on if it's really dancing or not. And I remember being at a show for iDance where there was this dance instructor, and she was very adamant about how iDance was not real dancing, and we
Hmm.
should not be calling it a dance game because there's no tango or marimba or any of these traditional dance type moves. And I thought about it for a bit. There was no way of winning with this lady either. She was really
Hmm.
adamant and upset about it. She still played it and tried it, but she just was so adamant about it not being dance. And so I thought about that for a bit, and she was absolutely right. It's more of a stepping and
Hmm.
foot-eye coordination type of a game. There is freestyling and things that people used to do back in the day, but it's not necessarily traditional dance.
Hmm.
So the whole naming for like StepManiaX came to be that we wanted to position it as a stepping game or more of like an aerobic type of fitness type of environment for branding. But then we also wanted to throw back to the original StepMania from years ago. And that's really how the name came to be. And it was funny because we tossed it around a little bit and we thought it would never go over well, and we weren't really sure with it because we were like, oh, okay, StepManiaX. People are gonna
Yeah.
think we're crazy or something. But it ended up just sticking, and we don't actually even care if people call it StepMania or StepManiaX, or there's all
Mm-hmm.
these variations. As long as Step is in the name, that's actually all we care about. So I've seen people say StepMania 20 or StepMania
Yeah,
10, and
10. Yeah.
it makes me laugh too. And it really doesn't matter. It's as long as you say Step, that's all that I care about. So, but I got into music games, and that's specifically what started the In the Groove development as well, because Chris had saw we sort of connected, and I guess sort of bonded over the Dance Dance Revolution concept. And at the time I started with USA and like Third Mix, and I had gotten really into those games, and I loved the music and I loved the idea. And he sort of introduced me to the team in Austin at the time for Roxor, and then that's just sort of how it happened. I started contributing project, and eventually it started taking up so much more of my time than my actual work. I remember having to take vacations from all of the jobs I had with video too. And
Oh, wow.
I made a lot of the companies that I would work for. They didn't understand like why I would have to take time off sometimes, and how it was actually never really a vacation. It ended up just being time to go work on something else. And I remember it was so difficult too, because I'd get home from my job all day from doing video editing and video shooting. Like I'd get home at like 5 o'clock, and then I'd start working again, and then I'd eventually get to sleep by like 2 or 3, and then
Oh,
get up by
wow. Oh, my
7 to do it the
goodness.
next day. So it was quite a fun process, but I'm really glad that it turned into what it did, because I of course, I had that opportunity to get in within the groove, and I owe a lot to Chris Stanford, and just sort of the passion and the connection at the time. And I love a lot of the classic DDR series too. I still use it as inspiration, and I would play it religiously even still to today. And for me, it's just a matter of moving to the music, and I loved the music from that time. So I think that's just how I got started, and how I continue to keep doing what I'm doing, is because I love that concept of moving to the music. And I can't think of anything else that's like that, because you're involving all of your senses, and getting great fitness at the same time, and hearing great music. So
Yeah, and it's great because when, I think back, I think a lot of people in the community, if not all of us to a degree, you and Chris Stanford and others like Glenn Maynard and all of them. There's so many people, because they, all this stuff has brought us together and strengthened us as communities, and it's created these great events, and it's created websites like, when I started Pump Pro Plus, it's because I wanted a place where Pump It Up Pro fans could come, and they
yeah,
could originally download files to make their edits for, because
yep,
I remember buying In the Groove PC. I still have my copy of it. I bought In the Groove
nice.
PC because I wanted to make a edit to robotics, and I couldn't, the zip file I had, I couldn't figure out, it didn't
The
work,
timing, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
timing.
yeah.
So like I was like, you know what, I'll
we
support
we
this
got you.
product.
We got
Yeah.
you.
Like, that was
You
the
had to
plan
buy
all along, was to get me just for that. So like,
it.
but I remember buying that and like, oh, now I can make my terrible edit that I want to make, like but
That's
it's been
awesome.
so great, because how you were, you started out doing your video editing, but then all this stuff, like at least in my story, and I'm sure it's the same for you to a degree and for other people as well in the community, it's like it led me to doing web development. So it's like I wanted to learn how to make websites so I could make my own website for this, and I do that for a job partly now, and also getting into a little bit of video editing and all that, so and
Nice.
graphic design. So I owe a lot to this community, and um to people like you and Chris Stanford, and even some other
Yeah,
people, you
yeah,
know.
and you mentioned Glenn. Glenn is kind of a lot of people don't really give him the notoriety he deserves, because between Chris and Glenn, actually StepMania would not have happened, because
Hmm.
a lot of people know of Chris as well, but Glenn is almost responsible for 90% plus of the code that's actually in the StepMania branch. And Glenn is just a mastermind when it comes to code. I don't know anyone else like him that can code or do the things that he does. And I'm fortunate to be able to work with him, because he I don't know anybody like him, honestly. And he's
Mm-hmm.
very gifted and talented at what he does. And he can literally do anything. And he's one of those guys that can make Doom like appear on like a dot
Yeah.
matrix printer or something.
It,
He's a mastermind with code, and he's just great, and he deserves to be known more than he is, because and when we worked with StepManiaX, that was one of the things we wanted to do, is we wanted to do something not only different with the stages and the hardware, but we wanted the game to work differently. We didn't want to use a PC,
yeah.
and we were able to get we worked for, man, it was almost like a year or two getting you can't really see it behind me, but there's a little tiny black box hanging under that monitor, which we're testing some things, and that's why that always runs all day. But the entire game runs on something that's this size. That includes the video card,
Oh my
the
goodness.
CPU, everything. And it's great because, and Glenn, again, he's the mastermind behind being able to do anything, and we're able to get a full 60 FPS arcade experience out of a box that's that large. And when you put it back to back with like an in the groove machine or anything that's latest today, you would not be able to tell what it's running, and it's quite amazing. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I
love it, because you're right. You're absolutely right. I don't think Glenn gets enough credit. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And I met him once about 11 years ago at I think it was ASIN, which is in Rosemont, Illinois, because I went out there. I went up there with some people with the Pro 2 team, because they were putting the game on display. So he happened to be there. And I just, I know that he's, great programmer and everything. So it's amazing that you can get, what StepManiaX is onto a little box like that, and doing everything.
Yep.
Especially when you compare, the monstrosity of even a DDR white cab is pretty big and beastly, but then you go to a pump it up LX cab, and it's like, I would love to have one of these in my house, but there's no way I could get it through the door. Whereas with a StepManiaX setup, it's easy setup, it's easy breakdown, and it's not gonna take up.
We thought about that with the design. It's we have another one that we've been working on for a while that's massive and huge, like the LX type of design. But honestly, we've found, at least in our experience, that like the 42-inch monitor is kind of like the ideal size
definitely
for what you want with a dance game. And you're absolutely right. Everybody doesn't have a lot of space. It's not abundant for people. And so we really thought about that with the machine design and tried to make it, as compact as possible. And it is. It's about it's a little under 2/3 the size of an in the groove machine, so it fits. And it's definitely sort of inspired too by the FX era of machines. But it's actually even more slim than the FX machine was originally. And it was. I'm really happy with the design of the machine, actually, and it seems like it's selling really well for us. So
yeah, it's great, because I love my friend's game center, his LAN center, gaming center there. It's easy for him to move, because he had it in one spot. Then he's like, okay, I'm going to move it over here because I'm getting some new stuff in. Whereas the arcade where I would go to play Pump It Up, it's like they've moved that machine around, but it's big, and it's like, oh, we got to move something out of the way because we got to get it up here, and it's just, you don't have that with the StepManiaX. But also I'd like to ask you some other questions too.
Go for it.
So because there's a couple of things I'm really interested for, from your experiences and all the different projects. But because, I love StepManiaX, and I want to support you guys and in the game and help in any way that I can, from like, if you were to encounter somebody who hasn't played StepManiaX before, who hasn't played a dance game before, but maybe they're interested, they're saying, hey, I want to work out. Like, I want some aerobic kind of exercise. Maybe I could do this at home too. I don't have to go to the gym. I want to do some cardio. So how would you describe the game to them? And if they wanted to get better at the game, what steps would you recommend for them to take to improve on playing StepManiaX?
So, one of the best things about the interface is, we don't really need to explain a lot to people. If you've looked at how it basically works from the flow, is we get someone started with it, and it's sort of intuitive. They know exactly what to do. And I remember when we were designing all of the UI elements, and a shout out to Jason Bolt as well. But he's a fantastic graphical artist. We all worked together though to come up with basically the UI and how the elements would work together. But to answer your question, there's really not a lot that we need to do to sell someone on it or get them started with it. Because like one of the things I love about our beginner mode it really makes things easy for even kids that are, like ages 10 or something. There is no age limit, obviously, but what we do is we restrict it just to the line instead of having to be concerned about 5 arrows at a time. You only need to worry about, left, center, and right. And I would say when people first start out, there's the whole there's the obsession with always standing in the center and then sort of popping back to the center. So with StepManiaX's beginner mode, it sort of solves that, because just like Pump It Up sort of does, there is a center position that people have to step on. The problem with Pump, though, is I don't think they necessarily understand that that they can't return to the center because the UI doesn't necessarily display it the same way. With StepManiaX, we sort of show visually the columns that you're activating at the time, which sort of plays into the way it displays a little bit easier on people's eyes. But a lot of times if people start on the beginner mode, it sort of comes naturally, because one of the advantages of only using the 3 columns is it lets us keep the rhythms actually still pretty interesting and not boring. Because like a problem within the Grooves novice mode is it gets boring after a while to hit an arrow and then wait an entire measure sometimes to hit one more arrow and then another arrow, and they're not really necessarily thought out well. And at the time, I can say that we didn't have a lot of emphasis in the easier and beginner type charts with novice. With StepManiaX, it's almost kind of like our center focus with the game, because we've really emphasized, there's so many people today that don't know what a dance game is. And so people that are part of the community and that interact like on Facebook every day, we all know each other, and we always have for several years. But so many people forget that there's what we consider, casuals or normal people out in society that don't know what these are or how they work. And the funny part about it is the game is sort of considered, the concept is kind of considered retro at this point.
Yeah, it's been around so long.
Old. I mean, they originated, yes, but you would laugh about it, because I would say that both, unfortunately, both Pump It Up and DDR and even In the Groove, they missed the mark so badly on introducing new people to the game, because they forgot about the roots. And there isn't a product that does that very well. And I'm pleased that I think that ours is, if someone's going to start with a dance game, they probably want to start with StepManiaX, because it's the easiest to use, easiest to understand. Everything from like the judgments, they tell you when you're early or when you're late, and that's carried over all the way until you're even an expert player. There isn't an arbitrary word like marvelous or fantastic or to understand, like, why is that different than perfect, or what does great mean versus perfect versus so all of those simple issues we solved with the UI, but it's also just very approachable with the touch screen, and you sort of get the idea of and the excitement of moving with the music, sort of like what originally drew me into the concept. But if people have like a setup at home as well, we also offer something in the game called Quick Play, which if you've ever seen it before, it sort of lets you just get started with the game, and it sort of puts a difficulty display on screen, and it's sort of like an endless mode that if you're just interested in getting some cardio and nonstop playing, it sort of bypasses the whole picking a song and then getting a result or a score and then picking another song. It just sort of it puts you into a song and then just keeps going and keeps going. And if you're getting cardio and for workout purposes, that's super important. And a lot of other games, there's a resting period after you play. Like there's a short burst, obviously, and then you downtime. And this does a really good job of solving that, because it's just ongoing all the time as long as you can take it. And a lot of people, there's people playing things like foot speed and more difficult levels today with various games out there. But I would say that if for someone that is just starting out or just wants some basic cardio, you don't necessarily need to play the hardest levels. You can get just as much as someone playing stuff like that if you're playing the game for 2 or 3 hours. If you're
definitely
not using the bar or focusing on conserving energy, because by the time 2 or 3 hours is up and you're playing even nothing but easy charts, you'll be sweating, I guarantee it. It's great.
It's absolutely great. Like even I forget, it's hard. So it's hard and wild. Those are the difficulties I play on the most, and then some. Yes. I play some fools too, because the step chart, the
Yeah,
writing
yeah,
has been great too. And it's like I said, it's great to see those throwbacks in some of the other charts, but it's great to see like new
yeah.
ideas and new things because you do have those center buttons there. And so there's stuff, and because I am a Pump It Up player mostly, and I can do doubles and stuff, it's really cool because I still get stuff thrown at me that I'm like, whoa, I never expected that. And we do some streaming on
Nice.
Twitch, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna give a shout out to this step chart writer because that was really, really good. And it's just that even though that StepManiaX is familiar, it's also super fresh because, like you said before, these franchises have been
Yeah,
around for 21, almost 22 years. And, DDR, I loved, I still would play it, but it's kind of become stagnant, and it's not to discount it or anything because I owe a lot to it, but at the same time they haven't really changed much of it. They don't, and I think maybe to some degree they just can't, because Andamira has a certain kind of engine, and I'm sure they can't replicate that, because there'd be some kind of trouble, or when I don't know the specifics, but one would assume that, that's killing our game here because we can't keep it fresh. We can't, and you're right, then they can't, it's hard for them to bring in new people to the franchise. And I think that's what you and your team are doing so well, is that you're
thank
saying,
you.
hey, we're friendly, we got a lot of great stuff, we got stuff for the older players, we got stuff for the newer players too, and so that makes your game way different than anything else that is currently available. Pump is trying, but they have that problem the worst, I think, getting new people into that franchise because people see someone like me and they're like, that looks way too hard, and I think that kind
Yeah,
of scares them off, and that user interface is difficult
it's
to
hard to
navigate.
use too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, though, like they're just like what you said. I think there are plus points and minus points probably to every
Mm-hmm.
dance game out there, and we could go over all of those really.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that I still respect about DDR as well, and obviously with Pump as well. But for us, it's just been sort of a focus to give people a choice. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people that go into the debates about why this game is better than that game, or like all of these infinite number of reasons. And for us, it's never really, at least for me, it's never been about that. It's just about giving people a different choice so that they have
Mm-hmm.
multiple things to play. So it's not all, a standardized or controlled experience from one person, or, right down
Exactly.
from the music choices or the step charts. And, you mentioned the step charts, and we're really fortunate because we work with so many people actually in the community. And Jonas is a good example. He's been around ever since the original In the Groove days. He was with us on Pump It Up Pro. There's a lot of other step authors that we have too that have been in and out all over the years. Like Jordan's another one of them. We've
Mm-hmm.
got Joy from Sweden. We've got Justin. There's so many different step chart authors at this point that there's just really good variety in there.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah.
I would say that it's I'm really proud of that as well, because we do have the like the old throwbacks, and then there's cases where we decide, do we want the old throwback to be sort of like what people remembered it being, or do we really
Mm-hmm.
want to change it? And a good example of that is like Bye Bye Baby Balloon. The chart is
Mm.
very modern, very
Oh, yeah.
different feeling than it was in the past that people remember. I guess Damn Diriam is another one it's very similar to how it used to be. And so it's really fun for us to pick out, when we have returning songs from other places, do we want to really modernize it, or do we want to, give people the feeling that they used to have? And we usually do that like with all the difficulties too. And that's the other thing is with the StepManiaX difficulty list is we'd really tried to, I guess, like trim the fat of the stuff that we didn't really need. And
Mm-hmm.
like within the groove, it was a good example of like the medium difficulty was just in a very strange place. It was never really utilized because it was in an area that just wasn't necessarily interesting to people. So there's
Mm-hmm.
really no reason to take the time to make steps like that
Mm-hmm.
because it just really wasn't utilized as well. And so, we sort of axed that difficulty as obviously, and we've done a little bit of treatment like that with the doubles modes as well, because we also have the dual and the full mode. But we've
Mm-hmm.
also thought about like maybe we need to offer some more variety, like a lighter double mode. And there's some things that could happen in the future that we've talked about, because I do think that doubles needs more representation. But of course it is also probably played like 15% of the time in comparison to everything else, unfortunately. So for us, when we make a lot of decisions with things, it's really a matter of development time, and then, assessing how much time should we put into this or change a feature based on how much it's going to be used. And we've really done a good job with balancing that, as far as I can tell so far, because, and of course, there's always things that players want to see, or there's always suggestions and things, and everybody can dream big, but it doesn't matter unless you can execute it well. And so we sort of focus on what we know we can really get in there and do a great job at. And then, we're always trying to improve things further, because for us, it's like an ongoing project. It isn't, I don't think there's anyone that would ever be satisfied with this art. Art is never finished until it's abandoned, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's always a work in progress.
I also,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Kyle. So that's a great answer, and I totally agree that it's based on each person's experience, and then that UI is very straightforward. But I kind of want to ask you some like musical questions too.
Sure.
Because
sure.
Once we got to StepManiaX here in Orlando, I was super stoked, because, like I said, it seemed like a unicorn out there, something like, oh, I'm never going to get to play that, but then once stuff started coming up, that I'm like, oh, I remember that song, so like, to you, how's this experience been for you and your team, bringing so many classics, like from past DDR mixes over, like the Fantasy, My Generation, Speed Over Beethoven, and So Deep to StepManiaX? Like, what has that process been like for you? Has it been exciting? Like,
Oh yeah, no, that just adds to the excitement every day, because I'm actually fortunate, because outside of, like the music gaming stuff or the dance gaming development, I have a passion for music production, and sort of that time period of the early 2000s dance music, which is, it's completely different than what we consider modern EDM today. They're not even the same. And it's okay, because it doesn't matter. They can coexist, and they can be different, be around for different reasons. But I'm fortunate, because I also reach out to a lot of these artists or producers or people that are responsible for the songs, and I just have common interests with them. So I'm able to talk with them. We're able to talk about the past, or like, things that that might be production related, like what type of synth that was used, or like how were the shows at the time. Just, it's all kinds of different topics. But it's always just fun to be able to be an outlet to introduce to them, and then sort of mention the benefits of bringing the songs back. And in most cases, I'm able to reach out to the producers or the artists or the vocalists, and really get them on board with the concept. And you'll be surprised to know how disconnected they were from like the original releases when they were originally released back in the day. They had no idea they were used a certain way. Some of the artists never got paid royalties.
Wow,
either,
that's
and all
crazy.
kinds of crazy stories.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard it all, but for me, it's just great, because it's kind of like an Easter egg hunt, and a side activity that I get to do on the side of all the cool stuff with the game. I get to explore new music and go back in time and like dig things out, and then it's sometimes a challenge. Like So Deep is a great example of that. We had tried to license that song for years. It's a very difficult song to license, because the label that actually produced it at the time is no longer around. But there's also several lawsuits actively against that label and the artists and producers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
There's quite a backstory with that particular. So there's kind of all these hurdles. I mean, we tried to license that song maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So that's not something that you just send out and you hope for getting a response in a week or something. It can be a process, and each one is a little bit different each time. So it makes it a little interesting and keeps you on your toes. But I enjoy it all, because I just like learning more and connecting with more people. And fortunately, a lot of the music that we use is all over the world now. And it's just been a really fun process to go back. And in most cases, I'm inspired by a lot of these people, obviously, but it's just great to connect with them and sort of be an outlet for them to get their music out there again for a new generation of players. Because, I mean, let's face it, it's nostalgic for a lot of older people that remember them from the time. But there are people that are, again, starting a dance game today, 22 years later, like you said, they have no idea about these songs at all.
No, not at all.
They don't know where they came from. They don't know,
Yeah.
no history. So, but these are great songs that are
Mm-hmm.
very catchy. They deserve to be heard. And so, there's no one else doing it. So I ask myself, like, well, why isn't someone doing this? I'll do
Yeah.
it. That's fine. I'll be the guy to go out. And so it's been fun to do that. And they're just as excited to be involved, really. And it's been kind of fun because each song sort of gets a little bit of different treatment too, because sometimes a lot of times I work with the original masters, and there's a lot of
Mm.
times where I'm sitting here in the studio, either fixing things or making it work for StepManiaX specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so deep. That was a really another good example. I have a DAT player that's in this rack behind me that you can't really see it, but it's behind the wall over there.
Mm.
And I'm the only one in the entire Portland area that has a working DAT player
Oh
apparently.
my
And
goodness.
I actually had to fix it. And I remember digging through these forms and trying to figure out how to get a rubber belt that just didn't exist anymore. I think there was a
Oh
one
my
in
good.
Austria for hundreds of dollars or something, but I was able
Oh
to use like a
wow.
little hair tie for women or something. I went to like a drugstore and anyway, I was really creative with it, but I couldn't. There was no other way to get the songs out from the studio release, because sometimes the artist will send an exact
Yeah.
the studio version, which I had to send it back to Belgium after I was done with it.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I
Wow.
actually had the original DAT for So Deep, and I had to figure out how to get it to work with the DAT player, and it was crazy. Anyway, every little part like that has a crazy adventure that I deal with literally like every day. And that's what keeps it so interesting to me, because it's not just, a 9 to 5 job, which is really how I got into this to begin with. I got bored of the 9 to 5 job. I wanted something that didn't feel like work, that
Mm-hmm.
was,
Mm-hmm.
made me feel good at the end of the day, and stuff that I could accomplish or just do that didn't feel like work and made me happy about life, I guess. And so that's really how I got into all of this and why I still do it, because to me it's more than just dance gaming at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like musical adventures or introducing new people to things. There's the whole traveling element, which is sucks that it's not a part of right now. But I love to
We'll get there
travel and show the
eventually.
game
Yeah.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
And I know it was so deep because it's like, I'm not I wasn't, and a thing I didn't mention too is that I was never into music as a kid. Like, I mean, listening to music maybe a little bit, but I was never into like playing instruments. So, because I got into dance games and that, like, it taught me rhythm. It's giving me so much more. And so now I play at my church, I play percussion. And I could play a little bit of drums too, but I just play cajon and for our
Nice.
worship band or whatnot. So it got me into that. But what I wanted to mention was so deep is that so deep. It's like I found out because I think Silver Tier is like one or two people, right? Together. I'm not exactly sure, but I was always told Jonas Steerer is part of that, or he was part of that. So that led me to go down a rabbit hole into his music and, find this great, like, dance, or, music or house music or whatever, and I'm just like, this is awesome. I wish I could see more of this. So, and So Deep is one of those strange songs. Like it's even hard to find like an MP3 of it, or at least it was. Like you
Yeah,
could, it's
because
on vinyl.
again,
Like,
it has again
like,
again it has a backstory that's pretty extravagant, actually. and
um,
and you're
yeah.
right. It's a collective of so it's not just Jonas. It's actually a collective of like 4 different people, and
Hmm.
there's quite a backstory, which I don't think we have time to go into with the scope of this discussion. But it does, right? I mean, that's one thing that music game or dance game music does, is it leads you
Hmm.
to discover the artists and sort of go down these rabbit holes at times and find other interesting things. And it's fun. I'm just like, it's fun to discover, new things on a treasure hunt or something. So
Yeah, it's like, and it's just so much to it, and some stuff I've forgotten just because time goes by. But we have time for a few more questions. But so what has been, well, we kind of went over that, but are about talking about licensing songs. But what has been the biggest challenge for that when licensing songs for StepMania? Has there been an artist that you've been wanting to get involved and they just tell you like no? I mean, there's no need to know to name names here,
oh
but have
yeah,
you had experiences like that? Like even though this was a song like previously in another game or something, and they're just like, no, I just don't want to deal with that.
there's been a lot of it's interesting because the problem when you license music is the artists or it really comes down to music publishers most of the time, because
Mm,
everybody is trying to think about it from a business perspective, obviously. And
mm,
for us, we approach it a little bit differently, because we're not, as you know, with the game, we try to not really charge people like DLC or anything for the
mm,
songs. I think of it more as a promotional outlet for the artists, but also as like a health and fitness and improvement tool for the people that are using it. So I try to explain it to people in sort of a different way, because we're not a traditional gaming company that is trying to
mm,
generate money off of music. And usually that's the very first experience that a lot of music people have is, okay, why are you contacting me? What are you trying to
mm,
make off of my song? Because obviously
mm.
you're talking to me because you're trying to make money from my song. And
Yeah, I
so
understand. Yeah.
and actually, like a really good, not to be specific, but my baby's mama is a good example of that. The when I reached out to those guys specifically, the discussion was kind of like that. I was surprised, because they had apparently, a lot of music deals are not necessarily the best, or music people don't necessarily have the best perception in an
Mm,
artist's mind when it comes to deals and stuff. But this guy, he it was really interesting, because I just randomly I send emails, and I send out letters sometimes, and all kinds of ways of contacting. And I randomly just got a phone call one day, actually from Miami, Florida, from the label. And I was talking to this guy on the phone, and he said, so tell me why I would want to work with you. Why do I want to let you use our music? And
mm,
what is your angle? Because every person in the music business has some kind of angle, and I want to know what
mm,
it is. And
mm,
so it was just really interesting, because that kind of perspective was very defensive. And so I spent about an hour or two out, maybe a little bit, like maybe an hour and 20 minutes roughly, on the phone with this guy, explaining the concept of what StepManiaX is and why it's good for him, and why this is such an iconic song that people want to see. And all
mm,
of that was because someone reached out on Twitter and wanted to see that song was revived. And so I
mm,
sort of saw it as a challenge on going back and trying to get. But no, it's just every single instance is never the same. It's been very difficult sometimes convincing some of the artists or the labels, but it's also the term. It's a lot of people can license songs for a certain amount of time, and then that's
mm,
why you see like they only exist in games for a while,
mm.
and then they go away. But we're very fortunate, because a lot of the artists that we work with so far, that it really doesn't happen. We sort of try to license it for life. As long as the game is in production, then we try to keep the song going. There are cases where we can't do that sometimes,
Mm.
with more well-known songs that we get, and we actually have some coming up really soon that I'm really shocked that we were able to make happen, like with some major labels like Universal, and So Deep is part of it's controlled by Sony ATV, and
Oh
we
wow,
even work
yeah.
with Warner Chappell, and it's difficult because those labels own different parts of the song in different parts of the
Oh my
world. So
goodness.
when you
Oh
think
no.
about North America, you think about Southeast
That's
Asia,
very
you think about
yeah.
Australia, you think about Europe. It's really difficult, and that's a lot of people don't understand. A lot of times we're restricted by what we can offer in the games, because
Hmm.
some of these people just aren't contactable, or you can't really make a
Hmm.
deal that makes sense financially to be able to do. And so it definitely takes effort, and it takes someone very determined, which that's the way I approach everything. Is I'm super determined, and I have to make this work, and there has to be a way. um, but it's difficult, and a lot of times it dictates what we can put in the game. And a lot of people, of course, would like to see things like Lady Gaga and Madonna, but you know
Oh yeah, that's
songs
just
like that can
yeah, yeah.
literally be, oh, they can be like $20,000 just for 3 years, like
Yeah.
not, it's pretty difficult. But we're very fortunate, and I'm happy that, just like the step authors, all of the artists that we work with, they really believe in the concept. They really enjoy having people hear their song. They love seeing the videos of people playing them. And it's really cool, because I feel like I get to be the person that connects all those dots, and sort of make it work for people in a positive way. And I mean, that's kind of why I'm able to really be positive myself, is because every day there's a different plot to solve or figure
Mm.
out. And I love doing that. So anyway, probably
No,
got
and
off on a tangent a little bit, but
that's amazing. Like, because you're absolutely right. It's really hard to, because I've heard like, sometimes the artist wants to do it, but the label's like, no, we don't want to do it, or you might have these conflicts. But another question I have about music is, I'm trying to find my question here that I wanted to ask.
Sure.
So like, because you do offer the ability to for the players to ask for songs, like what is like a song that you get a lot of requests for? Can you think of one, like, oh man, I keep seeing this pop up here, on this form or in this email or whatever it might be, however you get those requests? So is there something that you see like all the time that people ask for?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've introduced, I mean, that you see so far, I mean, they're usually pretty high on the list,
Hmm.
or they're just liked by people. There are some coming as well. I don't necessarily want to mention them, but
No, and that's fine. Yeah.
but
Um,
usually, like, we do look at that list, and it does have influence. But like the songs that are in the game or in the software so far, a lot of them have been requested by people, or they wanted to say. I mean, so deep is another good example of that. Bye Bye Baby Balloon is probably another good one. There's a lot of classics that are in there and in the software now that were basically asked for by
mm,
multiple people. And I sort of look at it as a case of how many people are asking for it, and then how realistic is it actually, to be
mhm,
able to pull off. Like
mhm,
what will be involved, what will be the budget. And there are cases where I unfortunately have to discount some things just because of how difficult it would be, or from a financial aspect, it just doesn't make
mm.
sense, to pay a certain amount for just one song. It just depends. You don't know. I mean, in the end, you want to try to make everybody happy and make it all work. But there are some cases where it's difficult, and you have to basically say, well, not be worth the investment. Oops.
That's okay though. That's all right. Um,
I think my headphones died.
that's okay. I can still hear you. You sound great. Um, uh, but so like, how's it been? Because I see that Yap and Naoki have come on board too. So like, I had a question about this. Oh yeah, so now that they're on board, I mean, do like user requests have an influence on what those type of artists can
Oh
can
yeah,
do for StepManiaX? So like, oh, I see Seiko's post is in here. I love that song, but I also love this Banya song. So like,
we've
I was just
it's
curious, and again, not it doesn't
it's
have to be specifics, but you
no,
know,
it's been fun. We've had a lot of messages from people that are asking for certain songs or things to be like other things, or to have transplants, or I mean all kinds of different scenarios.
mm-hmm,
And you know it's really cool to be able to work with both of those guys, because we are the only dance game in history that
mm,
people again, there's a new generation of players that don't know who those people are, perhaps,
mm,
which is interesting to me, but it's not their fault because they just weren't around at the time. But Naoki is iconic, and being able to have and distribute his music in our project is absolutely amazing to me. And again, it was one of those scenarios where I tried for months and even years to connect with him, and it eventually worked out, and it was
mm,
possible. And he's really happy to be involved with our game, and have his music in there. And there's been cases where it feels like a time machine. If you go back to
mm,
like 2005 or 2006 or something, and you were to try to predict what today would be like. I mean, and Yap is the same way. A lot of people don't know his involvement with Banya back in the days. But if
mm-hmm,
you go back in time and you tell yourself, okay, we're going to have the In the Groove uh, musician with the Pump It Up lead musician, and we're going to get the the original Dance Dance Revolution musician,
mm.
and we're going to put them all in a game. And it's going to be 2020. It's going to be
Yeah, no
new.
one
It's
would
going to be
ever think
cool.
that was possible.
Oh yeah, yeah. This I saw like some comment about how this would be like some kind of like discussion like at a con or something that someone would be
Mm,
joking about in a hotel room. Absolutely, but um, I respect those guys very much, and so it's great to be able to bring us all together like a trifecta sort of,
mm,
and sort of reintroduce this music to people in a modern way. And um, I like I said, it's very fortunate because there's not another game out there that is able to do this, and
mm.
I feel sort of honored to be able to work with them and help present that. So it's for the fans too, because it's just neat to sort of see these people come back again, just like sort of the older musicians as well, and sort of be center focus again, because they're incredible. They really were the origin and the roots of this concept, and they deserve to be in the spotlight. And for whatever reason, they aren't as much today. So we're fortunate to be an outlet to be able to provide for them.
And it's amazing because, like, for those who are just getting to know Naoki now through, whether they've gone back and they started playing DDR and like, who's this Naoki guy? One thing that they'll miss out on is that knowing that Naoki had, much like you've done with your music and different types of music, he had all these pseudonyms for, different songs, and so it's like someone who goes back now and they play this, they're like, well, I didn't know that this guy was this guy, or and this guy and that guy. And so it's like, because I remember, when iTunes first came out and I'm really into dance games, I would go through iTunes looking, well, who's this double Z guy, this double Zeta guy, or who's this Omega guy? Like, I can't find anything. Or there's some rapper called
who's
Omega.
Who's 190?
Yeah, like not knowing that. Oh, I had to look in, the booklet for Dance Dance Revolution Economics to find out, oh, Naoki is all of these guys. Okay, that makes a lot of sense now. And then Yap, of course, there's so many classic, Banya songs. And then when he branched out, I think it was in X, because it started with Chimera. I was like, who's Yap? Who's this guy? I had no idea that Banya was. I thought Banya was some dude. Yeah, like, and so it's great to see that, that this stuff, didn't burn them to their point. Like, no, I don't want to do this again. But that they could come in and then it could jump on board. And it's like, Naoki, I could have expected that maybe, but but when I saw those songs show up, like I think it's, what is it, Electro Asia, I was like, this song is awesome. Like, it's,
and that one in particular is a brand new production too, obviously inspired by things in the past, but there's been cases with Naoki where we're transplanting some things and changing them a little bit from like Seven's Code, and he's offered stuff to us or does certain things. There's really exciting stuff happening that's coming up actually that people will really enjoy. It's just like a blast from the past. It's really kind of cool. But yeah, it's just neat because these guys, are responsible for so much heritage and roots in the past, and here they are again, back where they belong. So,
and I wanted to ask you too, and it's okay if you can't say anything about it, but when I saw the 12 song, and I saw Ryu Kasaka, and I'm like, what? like I literally just thought that to be the greatest thing, because I'm like, I was a Ryu Kasaka fan. I've always enjoyed her work. Because before I was into J-pop, and then when I transplanted to Pump It Up, I kind of, I branched out into K-pop and kind of forgot about J-pop. But I always loved her work, and I know she worked with Naoki in the past and B4U and all that. So to see her in StepManiaX too, and I don't know how much involvement it's there. And again, like, that's amazing to someone like me who was a fan, because I love true Trance Sunrise mix and all the stuff that she did. So it's like, and to see her working with Naoki in that song too. And I don't know the whole story there, but that's such a great thing, and it was so unexpected. And then for Yap to come on board, because I saw the Hypnosis song and I'm like, okay, this is, and to be honest, that's the closest to like the Pump It Up version, which is fine that things are not exactly the same, but I was like that's Hypnosis. It's like, okay, we're going somewhere, like, so anyway, I'll wrap it up.
That song is a little bit of a different
and I kind of like understand, like, there's some things there.
You'll be happy next month then, based on what you've said. You'll be happy to what you'll hear next month. So
we'll leave it at that. Just a couple more questions for you, Kai, because I don't want to take up all your time. And again, like I said, I really do appreciate you talking, because we've been going for a while.
Of course.
So a couple things. Just I guess we'll do two more questions here, because I wanted to know about this. I think this would be an interesting question. We talked a little bit about like writing charts for StepManiaX, and you have a team that offers you a lot of variety and the step charts and how they're written and stuff. But what is your thought process? I believe you've written charts too, and I know you've written charts in the past, because believe me, I on Pump Pro Plus, I've logged every single Pump It Up Pro chart. So like I saw your name
Oh,
a
no.
lot, and I'm like, Kyle
I did.
again.
I didn't do it. I swear. No, if you liked the chart, then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
it. If you didn't
No,
like the
and
chart,
I
then
think you
someone else did it.
I think you wrote the crazy chart for It Feels Just Like That Night. I'm pretty sure. And I was
I
like,
did.
and
Yeah.
that was a fantastic chart. Like I love the Beethoven
Thank you.
virus S spins
The
and
spins.
everything.
Yeah.
But like, what
Yeah.
is your thought process? Do you think and plan ahead for a chart? We've kind of touched on the subject already, but or do you just go by what you're feeling and how you would move to the music in that situation? Or is it just, you
So
know, what's your
yeah.
process?
So actually, I change it up every now and then. And when I say that, for me, what's important is not necessarily, and this is very different. Like if you talk to anybody about step charts or sort
Hmm.
of rhythm game design, they're going to have a different answer for you. And it is all opinion based.
Hmm.
There's things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do, and it's sort of like theory, just like music, as
Hmm.
most people would know. But in my case, I don't think it's necessarily important that the steps go to every single detail in the song. Like if there
Hmm.
is a 32nd note trill or something, or a 24th note trill that's on a something odd in the background, or a bass, or a kick or something, I don't feel the need to put that in the steps, because just because it's in the song, I don't think it needs to be translated, and it doesn't always turn out, the best, it's not the best communicated way to
Hmm.
experience the song. I also think that's what's super important in songs, and I was just talking to someone about this the other day, is transitions. So when the music sort of goes between, like a chorus or a bridge or or a verse or something, there's from a music production standpoint, there are transitions or bridges.
Hmm.
So I think it's also important that the steps do this too. And when I say that, I mean like sort of like they go between the sections sort of like in a connected way without just suddenly being thrown, rhythms, just because it's in the song. Like it's okay to have some spaces in the chart. Like I wouldn't flip out if there's like a bar of no arrows, period, because
Hmm.
I think rests are just as effective as actually, pressing arrows at the time. um, but my process is I usually listen to the song for almost nonstop for a few days, and I try to think
Hmm.
to myself, like what would really make this be memorable for people, because I approach every step chart from a way of, and this is a little bit different considering today versus how my approach was within the groove, because within the groove we weren't as concerned about like the orientation or the way the player was facing. We really
Hmm.
cared more about the rhythm element. And
Hmm.
um, I would say that I've grown to appreciate the other aspects besides the particular rhythms that you can place with the with the patterns. I'm more concerned now about, are people facing left? Are they facing right? Is this
Hmm.
kind of a jump? Is it awkward going into another section, or is there a nice bridge or a transition going into the next section? So I'll listen to the song and I'll usually lay down everything from the placement and the rhythms at once. But sometimes I like to change it up too, and I'll just listen to the song and I'll just put the rhythms like all on the left arrow or something, and
Okay.
then I'll go back afterwards and I'll try to like change up the orientation and sort of change the workflow a little bit. Sometimes I'll use mirror. Sometimes I'll do things like flipping the ups and the down arrows, or sometimes I'll try to implement more center twists and things. I'm usually the one on the team right now that's sort of more of the conservative approach, because we have a lot of step authors that like to push the limits and
Hmm.
do things at the 22 plus range. And so that, back in the day, I used to be that guy and I used to do that. My approach more these days is making sure that it's a memorable song and it's fun at the end. So I'm not as obsessed with making sure that it's there's a 16th note run that's going to cause someone to get a miss or something,
Hmm.
uh, or super technical that someone has to do it a certain way. I try to take the approach of people are going to play it their own way, to get, for however they want to experience it, whether or not if they want to go for the score or if they just want to have fun. And I try to be the guy that's sort of in like the 20-22 range, because that's also been our most popular rating, based on the stats that we see that people play, because
Hmm.
you reach the most amount of people that are sort of in that classic 10-11 range. Not to say that other people aren't playing, the other things that there are, but you're reaching majority of the player base by trying to fit that need. And so I like to be sort of that in that area, because it's also what I like to, play as well. And I also like to not necessarily use the bar all the time. I like to sometimes change up. I mean, I'll play easy and stuff too. So
Mhm.
the easier charts are also equally as important to me. So I will spend hours on an easy chart just as much as I would on a wild chart, because I want to make sure that people, can do, they can spin, they can do bar flips, they can do all of the classic stuff that we used to do back in the day. And again, in the groove, never really focused on that very well. And Pump It Up Pro sort of did a better job, I feel like, because when we introduced the
Mm.
normal difficulty, it didn't exist in most cases for a lot of the charts. So we got a chance to really feel for it. But anyway, to answer your question, I guess in the most complete way, without using too many words, is I like to just make sure that whatever is being created is fun. And so no matter what, if the rhythms are slightly different than the song, that's okay to me. Just as long as the end result is what you played is just memorable in some way. Sometimes that hits people in a good way or a bad way. As long as it's memorable and it sticks out, that's really what I go for. And like I said, it can be debated several different places, because there's people that all have very different perspectives on a step chart. It's all opinion based.
Yeah,
So
and there's a
not to say
very
that I'm right.
and there's a very it's very much like an artistry too, because it is very subjective to people too, because I mean there's some charts that mostly playing pump, it's like I really like that, I really like turns, I like kind of weird transitions and stuff, but there's other people that's like, yeah, I'm just not feeling that. So it's good that
Yeah,
I love that you say you put effort even to an easy chart, and I understand how that goes too, because you know um with StepManiaX, I feel like you guys have a good range in your charts too. Whereas someone who plays Pump, another downfall of that game is like, oh, here's a new song. It's really cool, but the easiest difficulty is an 11. So, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
someone who plays below that, well, I guess I just won't play that until I get there. So then,
yeah,
my separate chart writing partner Pops and I, we go through and like, oh, we're going to fill in a gap for StepMania based engine. So, and write a UCS chart. So it's good that you do that, because I really respect that too, that, even though this might not be something that, an experienced player might play, it's still good for someone who's just up and coming and that. So, and
yeah.
Kyle, just want to end on one last question here. So, um,
Sure.
if someone's interested in learning more about StepManiaX, what's the best place for them to find the information they need?
Yeah. So the best way is, so we have a player group on Facebook. You can go to the StepManiaX player group. We also have a Discord channel that was started originally by a few players, but we sort of keep up with it with tech support questions or other things. We also have a Twitter that you can look at any sort of news that's coming up, and Lightning does a good job managing that, and thank you to him for that. But usually, like, also, if you just follow me on Facebook, lately I've most of my feed is mainly just StepManiaX stuff, because I just don't really feel the need to post a lot of personal stuff on Facebook as much these days, and I usually just use it as a promotional outlet. But if you follow me on any of those outlets, you'll see the latest trends or whatever we want to hype people with. You'll encounter it there. But feel free to become involved, join our Discord, talk to us, and our goal is just to really be welcoming to people. And it doesn't matter what you play or what it is that you enjoy. You should at least consider adding us in case someday you get a chance to try a StepManiaX machine or something. You'll get the insider information that way, and sort of like see the excitement as things continue to build. So, and one last comment on your step chart thing is, there's also cases where you'll write something and you don't like it later,
Mm-hmm.
or you wish it would have been different. That everybody probably goes through that. And there are cases where I look back at songs I've done, and it's like, what was I thinking when I did this? And I wish it was different, but here we are.
And
So
I know exactly what you mean,
you know how it is.
because the guys that were involved with the Step F2 P1 project, the Pump It Up variant of StepMania 5, they decided to step
Yeah,
away from it, because they want to move on with their life and stuff. So I was getting involved with them and all that. So I took over to help, try to help with tech support there and stuff too. So like Pops and I are going through and we're looking at older charts that we did a few years ago, and we're just like, we have that same exact feeling, like, what
Yeah,
were
like
we
what?
thinking? Like, that's not good.
I
Like,
know it
there's
happened.
so,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like it's, I totally understand. But Kyle, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on and talking. I think we talked about an
Of
hour and a
course.
half. You're a wonderful
Yeah.
guy, and I definitely appreciate everything that you're doing for this community. And I really want to see StepManiaX
Thank
soar
you.
to new heights. So it's a beautiful product. So if you guys get the chance to play it at any time, if it shows up in your city or somewhere nearby, when it's safe to go out and do so, in the future, give it a chance, because it really is a great game and it's got something for everybody. We do have one here in Orlando. So if you're in Orlando, you can go down to Ready Game Begin and all that. And Robin's a great guy. He'll play StepManiaX with you and all
Love
that.
Robin.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just, thank you again, Kyle, and say thank you to your team for me. And I'm looking forward to what's coming in the future. So just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Will
It's
do.
it's definitely appreciated. So again, thank you, and
Thank
I'll
you.
talk to you
We
soon.
appreciate you following it. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Sounds
Take
good.
care. All
Thanks a
right.
lot.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye. See ya.